All right. Welcome to Purdue at Westgate First Tuesday event. My name is Samantha Nelson, and I'm the program manager for the Purdue Research Foundation. I have a marketing manager back there, Morgan Davis, and alliance management from West Lafayette, Deanna Bush. And my director's actually here, but he's using my office. So, the team here produces these types of events to help bring awareness of certain topics that might be of relevance to you and or your company, and to help showcase activities and growth that are happening within the defense industry and the tech park. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about a lot of the topics that we have here, but I'd like to think that I'm knowledgeable enough to find out who that appropriate person is. So, or at least know who I can talk to find an appropriate person. So today's presenter, Jack Drew, who is 3 weeks in this job, right? 3 weeks in the job. He's the Senior Director of Global Business Development at the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue, which is an organization dedicated to accelerating the innovation and adoption of trusted technologies. So I think you'll be hearing a lot more about them in the future. But the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue is the creator and leader of a new discipline called Tech Diplomacy. It integrates technology expertise, Silicon Valley strategies, and foreign policy tools to ensure that technology advances freedom. So without further ado, I give you Jack Drew.
Hi everyone, my name is Jack Drew, and thanks so much for the introduction, Samantha, and thanks to you and to everyone here at Westgate for having me here this afternoon. I've been looking forward to this event and getting to meet all of you wonderful people. So we have about 45 minutes or so for today's session. Would love to make it as interactive as possible, so feel free to raise your hand, interrupt me at any point. It doesn't have to be all one way or all that formal that way. And what I'd really like to be able to do today is provide some information for you about the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue, and specifically about our Tech Diplomacy Academy, which we launched just a few months ago. And again, get to know all of you and answer any questions that you have that way. Just in terms of kind of my background and introduction, I live in New Hampshire. I woke up there this morning and flew from Boston to Indianapolis, and my first time in Indiana today. So it's a great state, and I've heard so many great things about the digital prairie and the hard tech corridor that you have here. Very impressive, everyone that I've met today, and everything that I've learned so far about all the wonderful work that you're doing, in and around hard tech and related to work with the Defense Department and Purdue University. And so Krach Institute is obviously a part of Purdue University. We're all Purdue employees that way, and so I look forward to getting to know all of you and sharing some more information with you. And with that, I would like to just play a brief video from our CEO, Michelle Gaida.
We're standing at the precipice of a new era of innovation. The tech we develop today will either lead to a future of freedom or a future of fear.
Authoritarian regimes are playing the long game, and they're playing for keeps. A four-dimensional game of military, economic, diplomatic, and cultural chess. And technology is the main battleground.
That's why tomorrow's tech must be trusted tech, because our freedom is literally at stake. And that's our mission at the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue, to advance freedom by accelerating the innovation and adoption of trusted technology.
We are the leading category of tech diplomacy, integrating technology expertise, Silicon Valley strategies, and foreign policy know-how.
We are training the next generation of transformational leaders, tech diplomats, creative problem solvers, and defenders of the values we hold dear.
We are building a global trust tech network based on our proven model to rally allies, unify the public and private sector, and ensure high-tech benefits humanity and won't be weaponized against us.
We are the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue, the world's preeminent trusted tech accelerator. Join our mission. Together, we'll make sure that technology advances freedom.
I'll have to do this one because that's okay.
Sorry. There you go.
Perfect. Thanks, Samantha.
Yeah.
And so the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue was founded by Purdue graduate Keith Krach, who is also the former Undersecretary of State. Back in 2021 is when it was founded, and founded with a mission to really help ensure that continued leadership within the U.S. and all of our key allies across different tech sectors remains in place, and that we continue to lead in all of a number of different areas of technology that I'll get into in just a moment, and that the mission also includes sort of preventing the misuse of technology and different technologies by our adversaries, different authoritarian regimes around the world that way, that are really focused on misusing technologies, leveraging technologies to take advantage of other emerging economies, other emerging countries, and so forth, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a moment. To accomplish this mission at the Krach Institute, we believe it's vital to train leaders in business, government, and throughout technology, also citizen leaders, to make sure that everyone is well equipped to understand critical and emerging technology areas and how that relates to the global stage, different policies held by the U.S. government as well as governments around the world, whether they be allies or adversaries that way. The Krach Institute, in terms of context and why and how it was formed, was really a natural follow-on to an initiative called the Clean Network that was spearheaded by Keith Krach during his tenure in the U.S. government, as I said, as Undersecretary of State. And he created the Clean Network in the discipline of tech diplomacy in a very successful effort to prevent the Chinese Communist Party from controlling 5G networks in the way that I had just kind of mentioned, that way, taking advantage of other countries, stealing their data, giving away, access to that technology for free in return. And so the Krach Institute for Technology at Purdue extends the work of the Clean Network in other vital tech sectors, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Training leaders in disciplines of tech diplomacy to ensure that vital technologies are used to advance freedom and not to spread authoritarianism. So this is our leadership team here. I mentioned Keith and Michelle already, but just to kind of give you an overview of the leadership team here. All roads lead back to Purdue, as I mentioned, with our leadership team, obviously with the Krach Institute that way. Keith was the former chairman of the Purdue Board of Trustees. Obviously, Dr. Meng is the president of the university, and as a part of Purdue University and as a part of a mission-driven nonprofit, everything that we do across our leadership team, across our entire company, is really focused on furthering the mission that I mentioned previously, and making sure that we have as big an impact as possible on both public and private sector leaders, so that you are well equipped to understand the technology space and how that intersects with business as well as policy. As I mentioned before as well, in terms of just how the institute was founded, Keith and Meng invented and demonstrated the practice of tech diplomacy when they took on Huawei, in particular, China's national champion in the market for 5G technology, as I mentioned before. And they leveraged a combination of tech expertise, high-tech business strategies, and foreign policy tools to really drive Huawei out of the Western market, and the UK specifically. It was vital to the freedom and national security of the US and our allies, and that really, again, kind of spawned the Tech Diplomacy, the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy. So in terms of the impact of the Institute, again, we were founded back in 2021. We've been hard at work ever since our inception that way, and really building out a global trusted tech network that way. And the way we like to think about it is network of networks. And so the three different areas that I'll just kind of orient you around here in terms of the global business and diplomatic network that we've built so far. 480 people and growing in the Global Advisory Council members, and that includes former heads of state, former and current politicians, and then the Global Tech Security Commission network as well, includes for example, the former Prime Minister of Australia, governors of different states and so forth, and just a lot of different leaders from around the world. And then lastly, the bipartisan honorary co-chairs, active congressmen and women and senators making up that group there. So building networks, creating that global trusted tech network is a big part of the impact that we have at the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue. Here are some of our partners, not all of them, but just kind of a sample of some of them. So obviously Purdue, we're part of Purdue, but also the Department of State. There are over 100 people at the Department of State using our Tech Diplomacy Academy and logging into that every day to continue to upskill and reskill in different critical tech sectors in areas of tech diplomacy. Guidehouse, US Taiwan Business Council, and more. And this list kind of continues to grow that way. So just taking kind of sort of like excuse me, a half step back. What is tech diplomacy? So I think tech diplomacy can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So I think it's important to kind of define how we think of tech diplomacy here at the Krach Institute. So tech diplomacy really is the practice of integrating technology expertise, Silicon Valley strategies, and policy tools to accelerate the innovation and adoption of trusted technologies. Important to know that tech diplomacy isn't just a thing, it's something that you do, it's a practice, it's a discipline, it's something that we need to do actively. And in terms of kind of trusted technology, which is another sort of term that we've been kind of throwing around here, what is trusted technology? What is that kind of all about? It's really not just about tech per se, it's also about who's using the technology, how are they using the technology, and to what end? What are really the goals there? We talked about the Chinese Communist Party and their goals of stealing IP by way of Huawei or other government-run technology companies. They're from the CCP, and that kind of China's firewall, which obviously is just completely one way. All of the IP, all of the data kind of goes in. There's no transparency there, and then they kind of use it for their own means and their own goals. So if as such, if if the technology is being produced by a Chinese company that way, then we can really be fairly confident that it's not a trusted technology, and so it really needs to adhere to these trust principles, as you can kind of see here, in order to really be considered trusted technology that way. I just hit the wrong button. Okay, great. Cool. So tech diplomacy is a growing and required new skill at the Department of Defense. Anyone here, I guess by kind of show of hands, working with the Department of Defense, or is that one of your customers, for example? Okay, see a few people here, that's great. So the Department of Defense has identified tech diplomacy as a required new vital skill to have, and therefore they're using the Tech Diplomacy Academy, again, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, to make sure that people in the Department of Defense are skilled across different technology areas, and they understand the global stage and policy implications, that way too, so they're well prepared for that. If that's your customer and they are focused on this new required skill, I think prioritizing tech diplomacy and developing that skill yourself would be a good strategy, a good thing to do, of course, and something to really look into. We really think in the Krach Institute that everyone should be a tech diplomat, whether you're a citizen leader, whether you're a business leader, or a leader in the public sector. Everyone should really be a tech diplomat, and the only way to become a tech diplomat and to understand tech diplomacy is really through education. So, as a mission-driven nonprofit, we want to have the biggest possible impact that we can, and to further our mission. And impact really comes from education, and it really stems from there. And so that's really the kind of essential to every agency mission piece. In terms of the new skill of tech diplomacy, again, it's top of mind in terms of learning and development communities, both within the public and private sector. These are some of the this is kind of the best way that I could kind of come up with to visually represent what tech diplomacy really is. And as Keith mentioned earlier, in the video, it's really combining high-tech, Silicon Valley strategies in terms of networking and creating a new category, and innovating at scale with different policy tools. We're working with the Department of State, for example, understanding how they're approaching diplomacy and how we can partner together, and then the whole technology landscape that way as well. What's going on within technology, how are things changing, and how can we make sure that we're remaining relevant with the content that we're producing to make sure that everyone is becoming a tech diplomat that way. Now I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and just talk about kind of 3 different examples of tech diplomacy. The first one being the Clean Network. I touched on this briefly before, but we'll watch a quick video on this, and then we'll talk about 2 other examples, kind of real-world, real-life examples of tech diplomacy in action.
You can click it, yeah. You can click it.
Oh, I can?
On that one.
Did I hit the wrong button? Sorry. I just hit the play button. I didn't show.
Oops. You should be able to, but
Yeah.
go back.
U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper warned that U.S. alliances, including future of NATO, were in jeopardy if European countries went ahead with using Chinese Huawei technology in their 5G networks. By early 2020, China's tech giant Huawei is poised to deploy most of the world's 5G infrastructure.
We have shipped more than 600,000 5G AAUs, over 91 commercial 5G content.
Where the reality we face as a nation is of ever-increasing cyber warfare and seemingly ceaseless variations of intense, perhaps even weaponized economic competition.
In June 2019, Keith Krach, former CEO of DocuSign, was unanimously confirmed by the Senate to run U.S. economic diplomacy as Undersecretary of State.
This Ohio boy, who began his journey welding parts and later had the good fortune of welding together billion-dollar companies, has had the blessing of a true all-American dream.
The Silicon Valley billionaire would take on the Chinese Communist Party, and one of its urgent missions was to defeat their master plan for controlling the future of 5G communications.
China wants Huawei to dominate the world. They'll find a way to do it, unless we are tough as could be.
The United States has developed a comprehensive approach to address long-term threat to data privacy posed to the free world from authoritarian aligned actors. It's called the Clean Network.
Great. So earlier I mentioned the invention of the discipline of tech diplomacy, the creation of the Clean Network by Keith Krach and Meng and their team at the US State Department. So let me tell you just kind of a little bit more about the story, and these are some of the the highlights here. In 2020, Huawei was on the verge of becoming the de facto platform for 5G worldwide. China's subsidiaries for the vendor had made it possible for them to offer the product at such a low price that they essentially drove all the competition out of the market. The CCP wanted Huawei to be the world's 5G provider because that would give them access to all 5G data, all the communications traffic as well worldwide. This, of course, would have been disastrous for national security. Everyone on both sides of the aisle in DC were saying it was a problem, so it was a bipartisan effort that way, but no one knew exactly how to stop it. So Keith, with being a Silicon Valley veteran that way, and at the time Undersecretary of State, he knew how to put together a team of tech experts who were experienced in waging economic warfare in Silicon Valley. So Keith paired them with leading diplomats and foreign service officers from state. Together they executed a strategy to build the Clean Network. Companies and countries that committed to using only trusted technology, not Huawei. So crisis averted that way. Perfect example of tech diplomacy in action. So next I'd like to talk about the CHIPS Act, which I think is familiar, to a lot of you, and probably near and dear for a lot of you as well. But just to kind of give you a little bit of background around the CHIPS Act in particular, and Keith Krach's involvement in writing the CHIPS Act and getting it passed. As, again, Undersecretary of State and as a Silicon Valley veteran, Keith saw that the risk of authoritarian governments dominating other tech sectors and leveraging these technologies to further undermine freedom and dominate the world stage was, again, at play. So he became the architect of what later became known as the CHIPS and Science Act. He outlined a plan for the U.S. government to invest in key tech sectors and restore or reinforce U.S. leadership in these key tech areas. It wasn't passed until after Keith had left the State Department, and founded the Krach Institute, but the CHIPS and Science Act includes nearly $53 billion in investment in semiconductor manufacturing and R&D, as well as 81 billion to fund other areas of scientific research and education, and 68 billion for related energy research and development. A close analogy is the US investment in the Apollo project. Our $140 billion investment in today's dollars put a man on the moon. The project not only led to American leadership in aerospace, but resulted in hundreds of spin-off projects, from kidney dialysis machines to microelectronics. So that's the CHIPS Act. Onshoring, TSMC and many other semiconductor manufacturing companies is vital, since semiconductors obviously touch everything with an on-off switch and basically every single industry area as well. So wanted to share some information about the CHIPS Act and how important tech diplomacy in action is, with regard to semiconductors and the CHIPS Act in particular. Lastly, wanted to talk a little bit more about Taiwan relations, and in fact, Keith Krach is, as we speak, meeting with heads of state in Taiwan as well as business leaders in Taiwan, discussing different topics related to tech diplomacy, semiconductor manufacturing, onshoring, and so forth, and obviously discussing the dynamic between Taiwan and China that way too. But Keith is continuing to work, doing the same work that he started with the State Department, reinforcing and restoring U.S. ally leadership in key tech sectors with our allies in Taiwan that way, and making sure that adopted technologies worldwide are being used in ways that are promoting freedom and are used in ways that align with U.S. interests as well. Again, really preventing authoritarian nations from weaponizing technologies to achieve their own national ambitions that way. And so that is the third tech diplomacy in action story that I wanted to share with you. Kind of shifting gears a little bit at this point, and we're about half past the hour. I wanted to talk about the Tech Diplomacy Academy some more. So again, we really think that you can't manage what you don't understand, and so education is the key to driving impact. And so what we did is we developed the Tech Diplomacy Academy across, focusing on 18 different core subject areas of technology that the White House published here in this particular document. And so in this national security policy, it identifies these different technology areas. We took that, we've now developed 21 different courses related to these 18 critical and emerging technology areas. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the Tech Diplomacy Academy now that way. But I'll pause there for a moment and see if there's any questions at all. I know I've covered a lot of information, a few stories and so forth. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Sure.
I mean, you talk about policy and technology and stuff, but recently we just heard about the founder of Telegram being arrested. So how does policy and governments kind of tie into all this and stuff, and work toward freedom and freedom of speech and some of those other issues? I know that's probably a pretty complex thing to consider, lots of factors, but I mean, is that what you're talking about here, and how to how to prevent that?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think it's a complex question, and it's sort of a complex answer in that our North Star here at the Krach Institute is technology must advance freedom, right? And so there are whether it's Iran or North Korea or China. There are countries that are trying to export their authoritarian regime governments out of the box by leveraging technologies that way to get embedded into those countries. The Atlantic Council, for example, recently published a study that showed a direct correlation between freedom and freedom-loving countries and prosperity. So really what we're saying is using technologies in a way that allows for access to the technology and free data without the motivation to take that data and turn it into a surveillance type of situation, a surveillance state like China, for example, and commit some of the atrocities that they are, that they're actively committing today. That's really the difference between having free access, not free access, but access to technology that advances freedom and prosperity versus having access to technology where there is a huge price to pay. It could be data, surveillance, genocide. So, but it's a great question. Thanks. Other questions?
How about TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's pretty familiar with TikTok and what's going on with TikTok. I mean, it's still based on what I know about it so far, it's still not been 100% determined where the government's going to kind of come down on that, but it's pretty obvious. I think that they are stealing data, they are keeping data, they are using it in various ways, and obviously outlawed across the state, for in terms of use, and that's a really complicated one too because it's cultural, right? And that's Keith talked about sort of the chess match that China's playing, right? One of those kind of aspects of that chess match is a cultural one that way. So we're a freedom-loving country. We have liberties. We want to be able to use these different technologies, but I think citizen leaders need to be educated so that they know if their attention, their dollars are funding technologies that are leading to things that maybe they don't support that way. So I think the policy aspect is really complex and kind of ever evolving, and then there's also the cultural piece of it as well. And again, just the importance to educate citizens, Americans, to understand that just because it's fun and entertaining doesn't necessarily mean that it's not leading to bad things that way. So
May not be innocent.
yeah, exactly. It might not be innocent. So that's an important kind of area of education that we're focused on is the citizen leaders as well.
Has Elon Musk been through your office?
Not that I'm aware of, not yet, but maybe I'll bump into him one of these days.
Okay. Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. Yeah. Yep.
So within your academy, you have a lot of different courses you offer, and I guess more on like my question, what kind of how many courses do you have, and of those courses, which ones are good for schools, like educating that citizen on, and then which ones are more maybe higher level, good for people higher up in the Department of State? Because if I'm understanding it correct, it seems like there's kind of two different. There's the super macro level, which you have Mr. Krach going to Taiwan and making sure you don't have China, creating infrastructure technologically that would hamper national security in other nations and allies. And then more on the micro side, it seems like you have that informed citizen and informing them of these dangers, of different products they use. And I'm just kind of curious of within that scale of all the different courses you offer, how many courses and what kind of courses for what type of people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Demographics.
Definitely. In terms of kind of the audiences, the learner segments, if you will, that we're really focusing on. So, technology innovators, obviously a lot of people are aware of different technologies, and there's a lot of places to find education about technologies, but we are the only source with the Tech Diplomacy Academy that pairs the technology with tech diplomacy and that context and that relevance that way, which is a key aspect of any kind of learning and development program. But in terms of kind of your question, and then we talked about citizen leaders and students in particular, these courses are fantastic. Obviously, I've taken a bunch of them. I'm kind of biased, obviously, but they're terrific. And there's 21 of them and counting. We just came out with the hypersonics course the other day, which is terrific as well. I think in terms of appropriate audiences, we've created these micro lessons. They're hour-long courses. They're stackable. Some people say they're snackable as well, snackable learning, because they're in the flow of work, they're on demand, they're asynchronous. So whenever you have time, you can do 10 minutes, do another section of a course that way, and then altogether, each course is only an hour long. And so you're getting the technology as well as the business aspect as paired with the tech diplomacy and policy components as well. And you also get a certificate. So I think that's great for any learner. It's a credential. It's an important credential. And has a person's name on it, and the people that were involved in the course, different industry leaders, as well as Purdue professors featured in each of the courses. But in terms of the courses that I would recommend, I would really recommend all of them. The ones for maybe citizen leaders, in particular, that I think would be most relevant. AI is on the top of everyone's mind. Everyone should kind of understand AI. One of the courses that I took from the academy is Intro to Neural Networks and AI. And so instead of just kind of being buzzy and throwing different words around, this really is a good investment of an hour to understand the background of AI, the amount of data that's used to be predictive, the different types of AI, how that looks within the policy space, and then what the future looks like that way as well. And then also with the Tech Diplomacy Academy, we're doing follow-on work for each one of these courses to provide updates on each of these areas, because the technology landscape is obviously changing rapidly, and so follow-on content in the tech diplomacy space is changing rapidly. It's important to have follow-on content to make sure that everyone's staying abreast of new developments. So I really liked that one a lot. I mean, they're all fascinating. Robotics is another course that touches a lot of different industries, and specifically manufacturing. So there's an advanced manufacturing course which is terrific. I'd highly recommend that one. Just everything that's kind of happening within manufacturing, agriculture, the data that is needed and leveraged in agriculture and in that industry, where it is today and then where it's going, I think is a fascinating topic and a fascinating course that everyone can kind of relate to, right? Like, where's my food coming from, and what are the realities related to that, and where is that going? So those are the ones that are kind of top of mind. Other ones that are just super exciting and fun are just, obviously the hypersonics course that I just, mentioned that we just launched the other day, as well as, our presence in space, and so forth as well. Synthetic biology, how that relates to biopharmaceuticals and so forth, and yeah, I mean, all of these different areas are relevant and important to, I really think, everyone's life, because they all touch our lives in one way or another. Like I said, whether it's reimagining energy, and what that looks like, and what that challenge kind of looks like for humanity today. What's going on there currently? How does that relate to U.S. policy, foreign policy, tech diplomacy, and what's coming down the road, in terms of energy, that way, atomic and otherwise, clean energies, atomic energies. Yeah, that was a really long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, it was a long
obviously,
question.
I'm pretty passionate about these courses. I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a great story arc to all of them as well. So you fly through them and you realize, with the pedagogy that we leverage, where we will offer, maybe 8 minutes, or so of content, and then an assessment, kind of reinforcing, that knowledge and so forth. By the time you get to the end of the course, it's only been an hour. It's really flown by. It's it's engaging and it's well worth the time investment. And the catalog's growing. So these are some of the areas that we're focused on now for kind of our next round of courses that are coming out. So as I said, we have 21 courses that relate again back to those 18 different technology areas that the White House identified in that document. But we're also looking at another course related to semiconductor innovation and manufacturing, building on AI, and then also switching things up a little bit into different formats, like case studies, for example. We already have the Clean Network case study. I encourage you, to check that out. It's on our site. And then these areas that you really see here. So we had a huge list of different areas that we would love to be able to focus on for our next round of courses. We kind of boiled it down, to these 5 areas here. So supply chains, capital markets, talking about clean investing, really building on some of the crypto work that we've already, crypto work and content that we've already developed in one of our current courses, and blockchain and how that relates to clean investing, and mixers and how blockchain currencies are used in a lot of different nefarious ways, and different attempts that are made to obfuscate transactions and so forth. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And so building on that and really focusing on clean investing, space mining, maybe not interesting for everyone, but I think it's fascinating. And again, that kind of builds on some of our aeronautical, our presence in space, courses that we already have actively in the catalog. Education and workforce, protecting U.S. IP, obviously critically important. And then cybersecurity, obviously tons of demand in the area of cybersecurity. We already have some content in that space, of course, but really building on that as well. So again, stackable credentials, things that you can really understand at an introductory level that's very accessible for everyone, and then you can really build on it that way to for deep learning, for deeper understanding, that way. New threats from generative AI. We just came up with a deep fakes course as well, which is also fascinating and timely, that way too. So that's kind of what we're doing right now, with the content catalog, and this is kind of where we're going straight away. Other questions? Yep.
Are the national labs involved with y'all, like Oak Ridge, Oregon?
National labs, not that I'm aware of, but I could find out and circle back with you. Which labs are you in?
Oak Ridge,
Yeah, okay.
with nuclear.
Yeah.
Of course, Argonne's right up here in Chicago. Energy.
Yeah. Not that I'm aware of so far, but it could be, because again, we're leveraging kind of networks and those, multiplier effects. So we could be having conversations with them, but maybe I'm just not aware of them yet. But I'll look into it and get back to you. Yeah. Other questions? So yeah, as I mentioned, every course includes industry leaders, like yourselves. So if anyone is interested in working together to develop courses, that's something that we're open to as well. So we could be in touch about that, and as well as obviously, acclaimed professors from Purdue featured in our courses. And again, the intersection between technology, business, and policy, that's really, what tech diplomacy is. And we talked about some of the format that we're using in terms of story arcs and so forth that way as well. So I'll pause there and just say that we do have a coupon code which I will include, in the follow-up with all of the slides that everyone here can really take advantage of for 50% off a subscription to the Tech Diplomacy Academy. So we'll send that around. It's TDA Westgate 50, but just keep an eye out for that, in your email. And that is good for the next 60 days if you'd like to redeem it and subscribe to the Tech Diplomacy Academy. So yeah, that's really my presentation, and look forward to meeting kind of everyone after the event here.
Thank you, Jack. You came in from Boston, so thank you very much. And first time in Indiana?
First time in Indiana, yeah.
Wow, you got the center right here in the middle of the cornfield.
Yeah.
Best part was his lunch.
Yeah.
His lunch was at a gas station.
Gas station chicken.
Yeah. We got the best of the best all there.
Country Mark, it's great. I recommend it.
I appreciate Jack coming, and obviously the Krach Institute is something, and the Tech Academy, Tech Diplomacy Academy is something that we need to bridge the gap of what the Honorable Michelle Gouda, right, said in the video, that we want to make sure that we live in freedom and not fear. So I thought that resonated with me so much, because technologies are growing at such a fast pace, obviously much faster than policies are being written. So we obviously need people like these and the partners that you had mentioned about, so thank you very much. If you RSVP'd for this event, you will get the slides and a copy of the recording of the event today. If not, let me know, let Morgan know, let Deanna know. This is my boss, John. We talked about him before you came in. He's obviously very late and missed most of it. But he had lunch with him, so let me know if you need any information on that. You can go to westgateacademy.com also to see the other events that we're having. I don't have it up next for October, but for the October 1st one, we are having a panel of NSWC Crane employees that will specifically be speaking on their work with scale. So there's a Dr. Williams, Dr. Karen Perry, Allison Smith. So they're putting together a panel and to make everyone aware kind of what their work is with scale and how it's going to be affecting, specifically in the microelectronics world. So I think that's it. So thank you again, Jack, for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Continue the conversation out in the lobby, I think, with sliders and baked beans and fries.
Yeah, I love it.
Not Boston baked beans.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.